I just want to ask you, what kind of wife are you? This weekend, that question was asked of me, but someone said to me, so you run the wife strut? And I was like, yes, I do, with pride. And she was like, so what's your take on being a wife? I was like, come again? So my question to you is, how do you wife? And who told you that that was okay? And what if you change your mind on that? I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that I feel about the wife perspective. Let's get into it. Hey wife, hey, it's Wife Strut Wednesday. I'm Shayla Coe, you know. When you say, what's my take on being a wife, what do you mean? Are you talking about the fact that people are on this train of talking about submission and what it means to be a submissive wife, and if that's something that's okay or what have you? And she was like, well, yeah, kind of. And I was like, well, first off, let's clear the air on that. I believe that being submissive means putting someone else's concerns, someone else's needs above your own. So when you're going to talk about submissive, I think that both people should be submissive in a marriage, because at the end of the day, you're team one, meaning you're one, and it shouldn't be this one-upping thing, you're below or above me, what have you. So that, I was like, let's just clear that up. But she's like, but what do you think it is to be a wife? And I was like, so to me, of course, I'm a believer, and I believe that the Bible makes very clear like what marriage means and what that should look like. I believe that my husband is the head of the household. I believe in monogamy. I believe that we're not having shared marriages and shared people in and out of our marriage. That's what I believe. But in regards to the role specifically, my take on being a wife is that you get to define that for yourself. One of the things that I think matters more is what you frame for your relationship and your marriage that works. I believe that you're constantly discovering what works and doesn't work in your marriage. I believe that you're constantly discovering yourself as a woman and a wife and all the things that fall under the umbrella with all the roles that we strut in, hence the wife strut. But I also believe that you're discovering yourself in this relationship as it even evolves, because we're always changing, hopefully always growing. And that means that there's something that should always be being assessed and referenced and questioned, if you will. Like, does this still work? Where it is that we were, where it is that we are, where it is that we're going. And so my biggest thing to her is that you write that for your relationship with, you all do that together. You don't let all these other people tell you what should and shouldn't be in your marriage, what a wife does and doesn't look like. You get to define that. And then you make edits along the way. I think that sometimes we've been pigeonholed into this title of wife. And so based off of that title or people's preconceived definitions, they feel like, well, then it should always look this one kind of way. Well, do I always look this one kind of way? Because I'm surely not the person I was when I first got married 5 years ago. My foundational elements and beliefs and values are the same. But me as a person, like, I've totally evolved and grown and adjusted my perspective on things. So how could I today expect to operate even as an individual, let alone as a wife with my husband and my marriage, the same way that I did 5 years ago? I don't think that that's even realistic. You guys know that I always say, like, I'm a nerd and I believe in research. Well, research evolves, right? It's hard to keep referencing research that was from 25 years ago if you're talking about something today. Now, there are things that are always going to be the base, research or what have you, but we always say future research. And if I could look further into this, what would I look at? I think that's how marriage goes. So I say, if you look at your marriage in that fashion, you look at being a wife in that fashion, where here's the contract if you want to go that way. But with contracts, we go in and we make edits and we renew them, right? Why is that not the case with our marriage? I believe that in your marriage, now what I don't believe is okay as a wife is that you just flip the switch, right? Or as I say, flip the script. There you go. I don't believe you can just flip the script and then expect your husband to know that there's been a difference and he just needs to fall in line. I don't think so, right? No different than with a contract. There is an effective date. So you can say, you know, I want to give you some insight on these things. This is how I'm thinking about this now. This is what I'd like to see. This is what I am and am not willing to do. I am in a season of what is it that you want? Ask for what you want. So if I'm saying, honey, what is it that you want with this? Because what I want is this. Is that negotiable? Is that an absolute? Is that something that we can and cannot deal with, right? So I feel like in the beginning parts of my marriage, let me think, what's a good example? So I very much consider myself a traditional millennial wife. right? So I have, and I can do a whole video on that another day, so we can give you some specific examples. But I believe that traditional values matter to me. Traditional things like roles. I believe that my husband should carry out certain roles, right? But we've had plenty of conversations about, well, you believe that here, but then in the millennial independent wife perspective, woman perspective, you don't want to have this correlate with that. So for example, I say to my husband, like, I expect you to open my door. Like, you're the man. I expect you to take out the trash. You're the man. I expect you to pump my gas. You're the man, right? And my husband's like, oh, you expect all these things, but I don't see you making my dinner every night. I don't see you ironing my clothes. I don't see you doing that. And I said, yeah, but I also don't see myself not working and you handling all that, right? Because even though I have this need to work for my own identity, he's like, see that there's this disconnect. And for him, there's disconnect. And for me, that's us writing and editing. Makes sense? So I just feel like what you have to do is communicate those things. And whether he gets it or not, like for me, those are some expectations that I don't want violated, that I expect him to carry out, and he has to say whether or not he agrees to that. So when I say wife, and what I think my views on that is, you create what works within you and your marriage. You and your husband are one, and y'all have agreed on that. Number two, I believe that you edit along the way as needed. And number three, I believe you always communicate what those edits are and when they're going to affect, so no one's caught off guard, no one feels blindsided, and no one feels like they don't get to have some dialogue about how things are changing, what this will look like, and what their role looks like to correlate with that. Whew, that was a lot of words, but I want to know, how do you view the role of wife in marriage, and what does that define to you? And have you seen how you've edited along the way? Is that something that you're open to? And do you feel like that's a poor transition? Like, do you ever feel like you're stuck where, well, I always did that and now I can't change it? That's a good question. Tell me all about it. I'd love to hear and continue this conversation with y'all. Until next week, keep strutting your strut like only you can. There's only you, one strut. Own it your way. And if you see a wife strutting along the way, recognize her strut. Let her own her strut. Encourage and support her strut, because no wife should strut alone. Bye, ladies.